Around the world, a woman dies in childbirth every minute. Every year, maternal deaths leave 1 million children without a mother. And children without mothers are 10 times more likely to die prematurely. Those are all dire numbers, but can anything be done about it? Our next guest thinks so. She believes women should be given access to contraceptives. They should be empowered to make their own decisions about pregnancy and family planning. Just taking those steps can have a far-reaching impact on the well-being of her family and her community. There are currently more than 220 million women in the world who have a need for modern contraceptives and don't have access to them. Giving women control over their reproductive health is not only a woman empowerment issue, but it's a top 5 global health issue that is still being treated as an afterthought. At least that's how Saundra Pelletier sees it. She's an expert in women's reproductive health technologies and an advocate for international gender equality. She's also the author of Saddle Up Your Own White Horse, 5 principles every woman needs to know. And she currently serves as the CEO of Woman Care Global, a nonprofit organization that works around the world to provide women with greater access to high-quality and affordable women's health care products. And we want to welcome you to Full Frame. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I just read off those dire statistics, and I know you know them probably inside out, but do you still sit there and think about that and say, it's shocking, and why are we still talking about this?
Staggering. In fact, you know, sometimes I talk to people and they say, are we still having this conversation? It seems like such an old topic. And, you know, my rebuttal is that if we would finally embrace it, you know, and really get under this and create the platform for women to have access, women will make the right decisions. They don't want huge families. They want a quality of life for the children that they do have. So the 230 million women that have an unmet need, 165 million of those are in the poorest countries. So the need exists. I know that there are things that are provocative like HIV, but if we can really address contraceptive choice, so many other problems will be solved.
If those women have that control that you're talking about, which they don't at this stage, right, what does it mean for their life, for their community, for their families, would you say?
I will tell you that it would be so significant. There's so much data and statistics that show that when women are empowered with the dignity of choice, you know, being able to choose when and if and how often they have children, they contribute more to the workforce. They're able to then look at the quality of life of their own children and make sure they have education, so they're contributing factors to these societies. So the economics, there's a true dollar and cents around really empowering women with access to safe, affordable contraception. You know, and we see women who will walk 2 days pregnant with a baby on their back just to be able to have access to get safe contraception.
You know, it's interesting you were saying, you know, we're still having this conversation and the passion that comes out when you're talking about this. Clearly, this is something you care passionately about. Are there days where you just have to look at the small victories, or do you feel like you are making headway, or is it one of those days where you're just like, oh, people, listen to me, you know, or do you go through all of those?
I would tell you that I pretty much, it's a labor of torture for me. I mean, it really is. I will be very honest. Because people say to me, oh, well, we care about global warming. We care about clean water. We care about nutrition. Everybody's moved on to something else. And I say, look, at the beginning and the middle and the end of the day, if there are fewer children that women want, by the way, this isn't force-fed. We're not talking about forcing sterilization on people. We're talking about really allowing them to choose family size. Everything else that people say they care about will be better served. We'll all make more progress. So I will be honest, I never want to come across as angry or frustrated, but, right, you know, I will.
But
I'm
you're
unsettled.
Angry and frustrated.
I am. I'm unsettled about it. And yeah, I think I need to be, because I just want to help ignite more people.
You know, Bill, I just did an interview with Bill Gates not too long ago, and he and his wife are obviously throwing money at this issue. You see other philanthropists, yeah, who are getting involved, and yet we're still kind of right where we're at. Yeah. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it's a number of reasons. I do think that there needs to be better metrics and better measurement around philanthropy and nonprofit. I think we need to really look at where the base is in a lot of these countries, and we need to put real ways to research and evaluate our progress. And we need to do it in a more private sector way. I do think around sexual and reproductive health, we need to get a lot more focused on showing our wins and sharing them with the world, so people will think we're not just throwing good money after bad. Mm-hmm. So, and I do think the Gates Foundation is really insisting that the metrics are more intense, and I think it's a step in the right
Okay, so
direction.
if we're looking at the standings and the wins,
Yep,
if we're going to use sports metaphors,
yep,
where
yep,
do you look and see wins right now?
So right now we see a very big win in a program that we call MAX. It's Maximizing Provider Performance. So we go into markets and we actually collect data from providers and say, are you giving a woman choice? And if you're not, why is that? Were you only trained in one method? Were the money that was supposed to be spent on contraception spent on drugs or weapons? What are the real reasons? And then we do real-time interventions. So in places like Kenya and South Africa, we're actually not only seeing that the providers are really engaged, but we're seeing true measurable change for the women.
Okay, I looked on your website. Woman Care Global's business model is an unusual one for a nonprofit. It's how you do your product sales and how you do things that is very unique and very different from how others might do it. So talk to me about how perhaps maybe you might go to this country in this way, you might go to this country in another.
When we did an environmental scan of what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities to really launch a company like Women Care Global, what we recognized is that there's huge competition for subsidization, right? The donor funds are becoming less and less. So we knew we had to use good business practice. And so we go into more developed markets like Mexico City, Puerto Rico, Turkey, the United States, and we generate a modest profit that we then use when we operate at a loss on purpose in Ghana, in Kenya. So it's a hybrid model. We like to call it the Robin Hood approach because it feels good and sounds good, but it is good. It's good business sense. And when people, philanthropists, want to invest in us, they feel good about it too because they know that we are using good business practice, that we can be transparent and show them where the money goes.
Let me ask you about some of the issues that you deal with because each country is unique.
Yeah.
Each country is different. There's got to be certain red tape. There's probably corruption that you deal with some countries. And then you've got religious beliefs, you've got cultural, all of these things. It's kind of a stew that you have to navigate. How tough is that?
It's incredibly tough. For example, there are some countries we go in and they say, oh, well, you know, women in Mexico are different than women in Brazil. So you're going to have to do a whole new clinical study. And you say, how could that possibly be? It's the same subset, it's the same age. So sometimes they will put obstacles in front of you just to get you to go away because their religious belief says women shouldn't have access to contraception. So it's very challenging. And when child brides, when you see these poor young girls, they're 13 years old, far too young to have 2 and 3 and 5 children. So it really is about figuring out the covert ways to go through the back door. Maybe you do it through hairstylists. Maybe you're doing it through community schools. But we really figure out other partners to work with that are really well skilled in some of these ways of communication and getting education out. But it's very challenging. And the other quick thing to say is that what's excellent about our expertise is that we bring quality manufacturing and regulatory. Why it matters is there's a lot of counterfeit products out there. Once you finally convince these poor women to do something against their religious beliefs, you want to make darn sure that it's a good product, that they can afford, that they don't have side effects from, because one negative experience, they'll stop using it.
Let me ask you about the one-child policy in China. How do you think that's impacted that country? I mean, it was a temporary measure in 1979.
Yeah.
It's been in place for quite a while now. Your thoughts on that?
So I think originally, I really believe the intention was good. I do. I think it was an intent to lift people out of poverty, to really escalate the middle class and increase the middle class. And so I think it set out to do something really good. I think the unfortunate part, the side effect of that was the selection process. You know, there's 50 million males in China. You know, so really doing the male selection was so devastating to women. So I think now, at the end of the day, I'm a little discouraged to say this, but I'm worried that even though things have lightened and I think things will lift, I'm not sure how much good it's going to do because the poorest families couldn't pay the fines anyway. They were still having more children than they were supposed to. So really the sanctions went on people that were more privileged, that could afford it. So I think they're in a place now where, though the intentions and the change, I think might have always been in the right place, I don't really know that that much progress is going to be made unless they find more programs to really educate and empower the poorest of the poor.
Are you working in China and are you finding that consumers there are receptive to your message?
We are working in China. We actually have some fantastic manufacturers in China with very high quality products, and we are finding an unbelievably positive reception. Yeah, I actually couldn't be happier about that. We were a little trepidatious to see how it would go, and it's very positive.
Saundra, let me just ask you this. If you were to come back on this program in 5 years from now, what do you think we'll be talking about, and what would you like us to be talking about?
So I would love to come back in 5 years. I would like to be talking about two things. One, I would like to be able to tell you that we are doing very little work in contraceptive choice because the problems have been mostly solved.
You're retired.
I'm retired, exactly. I'm coming back for a totally different reason. But I would like to tell you that the money around things like HIV and the money around nutrition, that things that are equally important, but there was a huge shift that happened. That all of a sudden the wave, the eyes opened to say, oh my goodness, access, true access and the dignity of choice really is the first step for everything else to make sense. And so I would like to tell you that there's not 230 million women that have an unmet need. That's well below 50 million.
But the realist in you suspects you'll be back here in 5 years just as passionate as you are today, or will we make
No,
at
we're going
least
to
some
make progress.
headways?
No, I want to be honest. I really believe this. I really believe that we're going to make measurable progress. I don't think I could get up every day and do Groundhog's Day. I couldn't. I couldn't step into insanity. I just couldn't. I'm too pragmatic for that. So I really believe we're going to make progress. I think it's going to be a 50% difference in 5 years.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have you back in 5 years.
Thank
How's that?
you. Thank you.
Saundra, thanks so much for coming in. Really
Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
it.
Yeah, pleasure.